welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, your ambassador of nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
Back in 2016, I was on a forum that was technical in nature, but like a lot of forums did and still do, they had a like an off-subject chat room or whatever, and people would get in political arguments there, and I was always happy to join in, or religious discussion. Either way, it was pretty open. They let you say pretty much what you wanted. I guess if you got really insulting, they would step in. But somebody started. It was like the day after Trump was elected, and some joker Canadian started some kind of subject line about Trump being a nutcase.
From Canada, eh?
Yeah. I was right in there, and, back then I was really happy that Trump had been elected, so it ended up being, I left the discussion after it was 3 times longer than their longest thread.
Oh, yeah.
So, and, I noticed, I've been in these kinds of discussions before, and I know it's pretty common for the left to evade subjects, and they've got all these weird tricks they pull up, like they'll like throw a barrage of arguments at you. The person does this, and this, and you try to focus in on one of them, and they quickly say, well, yeah, you're focusing on this one little point, but you got to take all the points. Even though all of the points are wrong, it's just that it takes time to argue each one of them.
Right.
It's pretty common, but I noticed it on a whole new level here. Mm-hmm. And I'm focusing in on various points, and I decided, okay, I'm going to get at least 1 or 2 of these guys to engage with me. And I am going to fight this one point until there's nothing left to fight. I'm going to force them to see the truth on this. And the subject was taxes.
Okay.
And about cutting taxes and how that helps an economy. And a Canadian, I guess, wouldn't get that. But
they didn't even want to acknowledge that basic reality? I mean, that...
Right.
That, like, economics 101 kind of...
Yeah. So...
Wow.
I mean, I went tooth and nail on this, and the arguments got so idiotic that I didn't even know how to respond. They were so stupid. And it was like, we've pointed out that... I've never
seen no plant grown out of no toilet.
Yeah. I mean, it was stupid stuff like that. Like, what do you...
Yeah.
How do
you answer that?
And then... I kind of cooled off, and I just kind of backed off a little, and I'm trying to rethink my strategy here. Because I think of argument as a strategy and as a game, and you try to win. That's what you do. And I'm kind of just lurking in the conversation, watching it, and this same Canadian who fought me tooth and nail on this starts criticizing the tariffs. And I said, what's wrong with the tariff? And he said it's going to hurt the economy, it's going to cause prices to go up, and incomes to go down. And I asked him to explain to me why. And it was the same dang argument I was making for taxes, just in reverse, because tariffs are a tax. I said, how can you not see that you're saying exactly what I said?
Yeah.
It's just that Trump is doing it now, and it's a tariff instead of a whatever kind of income tax. How can you not see this? He had some kind of goofy answer, but it just occurred to me that this man does not want to know or see the truth. He's not even arguing for the truth. I don't even know what to call this. And it's been on a whole new level, especially since Trump was elected. I just realized how futile it is to argue with certain people. And in fact, maybe even at this point, most people.
It may be most people, especially educated people. When my son went to Purdue freshman year, and he's got to get these textbooks and stuff, and so I'm helping him, and so and things are starting to turn to where all this stuff is online now and that kind of stuff. And this is pre-COVID. This has nothing to do with COVID or anything. But there's this English textbook that he has to buy or rent or something like that. But it's an online thing, and it's for writing. It's basically like a writing style and skills book or something.
Yeah.
But here's and it's I'm kind of reading the I guess the introduction of, not the introduction to the book itself, but the website's introduction to how this book approaches writing and the skills it's going to teach you and that kind of stuff. And you remember, probably from, I don't know if you had to do many research papers in school, but the basic approach was kind of, you've got your topic, you have your thoughts about your topic, but now you have to go do research. You have to find facts. You have to assemble your facts around your topic, and then you have to decide what the facts mean. You have to get the facts first, interpret them, let them speak for the reality that's there, and then use them to try to say something interesting about your topic or convince somebody about your point of view related to the facts. But the point is, you have to start with the facts, and it may not lead you where you think you're going. And that's always been kind of a basic staple of writing research papers throughout high school when I was in high school. This college writing book, I wish I could quickly pull and find the description itself. But they basically, described the writing process as you first decide what you want to say, and then you assemble your rhetorical tools to try to make it convincing to other people, and then you find the facts to support that. This is the process of writing that was being taught to my son as a freshman in college. Now, if that's the way textbooks are today, then this problem that you're describing is not only probably a problem with, perhaps most, certainly a lot of people, but more so is a problem with most educated people.
I have a car key.
Your car key?
Yes.
No.
That's what I lost in your dad's yard.
How did you lose a key in my dad's yard?
I don't know. It's on that big purple thing.
You're going to have... Pull these boys out. Make them go help you look for it. I'll tell you what.
Dude, it's
like
dark.
They're not
going to find it. It's dark.
Yeah, I know. But every night that I have to record, it's like right then that everybody needs everything.
Crises happen. Yeah, this happened last night, or last week, too.
Yeah, I said, okay, I saw your text, and I texted you and said, I'll be ready in 15 minutes. And I'm getting ready, and Vicky says, oh, there's a burger there for your dad, and you have to take his medicine over. All right, I'll quit. I'll go do that real quick. The second I walk in, Dad's, he's like, okay. I need somebody to take me to UDF to get some milk. I'm like, I said, Dad, I'm going to have Vicky come take you when she gets home. She'll be home in just a minute.
You could have put me off, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's the way it is. But
it's the devil trying to keep us from recording, I guess. I don't know.
And now apparently Vicky lost her keys in his yard somewhere.
How do you lose the keys in somebody's yard somewhere?
Oh, jeez.
Is it it's between your front door and his front door?
Yeah, it can't be that much. And we have some really nice
take a flashlight out. The boys will find it in no time.
So I have a lot of flashlights because this is I don't know. The little vape pens.
Do you buy those little disposable ones that hold in your hand real well?
No. Vape pens, or the vape things, the juicy battery operated things. I bought one of those. It had 2 batteries. I wanted 2 extra batteries. So I'm looking around online and I saw the batteries and they were kind of expensive. More expensive than I thought they should be, but I went ahead and ordered them. And then I noticed they don't fit my flashlight. So I went online and tried to look specifically for the right batteries. And I noticed that these batteries, if you buy a flashlight and 2 batteries, it's cheaper than buying just 2 batteries. And I wanted 4 batteries. And then...
So you end up with 2 flashlights.
I started thinking about having these flashlights at work and in different areas where they would be helpful, and I wouldn't have to... And I would have them in places where I couldn't lose them. I ended up with like 5 flashlights and a bunch of batteries. And they're real nice. And the batteries are all rechargeable and stuff. So
cool.
I have a bunch of flashlights.
Nice.
But I hide them so that they don't know where they are.
Oh. You ought to have one that you don't hide.
Yeah, I do, but they don't pay attention to me.
But they
when
still
I tell
don't know where
them
it is.
I'm like, hey, this is right here. And then when they need a flashlight, Dad, where's that flashlight? Okay.
So how much of that are you going to cut out?
I don't know. See, I never know, because I do know that people like a little bit of banter, and I never know how much to leave
the
in.
Background, weird stuff, family intrusions.
Yeah, and it's... I'll cut out like half of it,
and
I guess.
You never know what's going to come up while we're recording.
Yeah, because I don't have a room I can get away from everyone. So I...
Okay.
Okay, the way
so
they...
anyway,
these
my
books,
point is, I think there has been a deliberate and rather systemic, the liberals love that word, systemic racism.
Yeah.
Anyway, a systemic movement to sort of divest people of the ability to reason from facts to conclusions. Or
and
at least
notice,
from information to conclusions.
This kind of happened as they pulled people away from the classic Western value system,
Curriculum.
It's like, as we got more and more communists, we got more and more stupid, and the ways in which we thought things out just disappeared and was replaced by something else entirely. But I think that's only part of it.
Well,
I think
are
sin
only too
is
ready
just
to
a
do that,
huge
too.
part of it.
I mean, I think there's something diabolical, but diabolical in a sort of a more innate way. We did a podcast about concupiscence, and I've never read another Catholic saint or theologian describing concupiscence the way I described it, the way I proposed to understand it. But it's an inversion of the right ordering of intellect to will to appetite, so that the appetite becomes the ruler of the will, and then the will and the appetite become the ruler of the intellect. And to me, because that is the tendency to do that is a part of our fallen natures, when you present people with what look like good reasons to do that, they're all too happy to. And it's rather easy to lead people down that path.
Yeah. There are times when...
Look at... We've got schools now, I think like Oregon, didn't they just decide that objective standards of education are racist, and so they're doing away with them for English and math?
Yeah, it's nothing short of insane.
Yeah, it's purely lack of sanity.
To the point where you again, you're at a point where it's like I don't even know how to respond to this. It's so idiotic.
You can't engage the people at the point of the argument itself, because they're not capable of even engaging at that level.
Right.
It's like at some point, this is where I'm beginning to think it's kind of like Western civilization has to go through a skin shedding, kind of like a snake, shed its skin. And sort of like a rebirth after, the so-called Dark Ages, and then there was a rebirth and growth of Christianity. That almost has to happen again, because there's the people themselves as a broad class are simply not equipped because of how they've been trained, how they've been brought up, how the schools have indoctrinated them, and so forth. They're not equipped to even engage thoughts and arguments at a level that these things can be sorted out. And so at some point, I almost wonder, is the answer going to be, in a way that's very painful to us and our children and grandchildren, Western civilization is going to just fall apart. And then out of that, there will be a rebirth of some kind.
I don't see really any other way. When I think about an argument, I might say have a discussion with someone, and then maybe halfway through the discussion, I realize they believe something, and they're in error about what they believe, and then I'll sit there for a while, maybe the next day, thinking about why would they think that. So I'll plan out the discussion in my mind. Well, if they understand this, and if I can show them this, then it would logically follow that this is true, and then they'll hear my explanation, and then they'll see, it's this way, not this way.
It doesn't work that way ever, does it?
No, not at all. And I get caught up on the strangest things.
Like whether plants grow out of toilets. I mean, I feel like I'm Luke Wilson in that room so many times when I'm talking to liberals or to liberals, anti-Christians, whether it's politics or religion. I end up feeling like I'm in that room.
Yeah. And lately, it's not even anti-Christians. It's not even anti-Catholics. It's Catholics. And
yeah, that's true. That's true.
This goes back
it's
to
not like political liberalism. It's like this. I don't know, this weird divestment of any commitment to an absolute truth.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, there's a truth out there. That truth is, I have to find it. There's a way that things are. I need to find that, and then I need to live accordingly. That is gone from most people, even from most Catholics, it seems, today.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's kind of, it was instinct for me from the time I was a kid, even in my teenage years when
we always called you the Policeman of the World.
Yeah, I'm the policeman of the world. I have to make sure everybody's living according to the truth.
In a good way. I mean, that's the thing. It's that you were that way because you had that instinct that everybody ought to have.
And the thing is, it's like, it kind of goes back to what we've been saying about the Pope and the bishops for a while now. Because you have to accept the fact that they're either really stupid or really bad. And I'm starting to understand that it's not one or the other, it's both. Because one stems from the other. Yeah.
They reinforce each other. It's just like this textbook that I mentioned, that my son had to use. It's you start with the goal that you want to achieve. Before you know anything, you start with a goal. Oh, well, what do I want? Well, you start with your appetite, and then you develop the rhetoric that can lead your will down that path, and then you come up with the facts to serve your intellect that'll convince you on that path. Well, that's a recipe for evil, and it's a recipe for stupidity that reinforces the evil, that reinforces the stupidity.
In the Summa, St. Thomas Aquinas talks about folly, F-O-L-L-Y. He doesn't ever actually define it, but you have to read a little bit to figure out what he's talking about, because we don't use the word a lot now. But it's foolishness, but foolishness that's willful. And it's a nonsense way of dealing with life, because you've made yourself incapable of judging spiritual things and right and wrong. And he points out that folly insofar, and I'll quote here, folly or foolishness, insofar as it is a sin, is caused by the spiritual sense being dulled, so as to be incapable of judging spiritual things. And a man's sense is plunged into earthly things mostly by lust, which is about the greatest of pleasures. And these absorb the mind more than any others. So his point is that folly or foolishness arises chiefly from lust. And we see that happening, especially in the Catholic hierarchy with these bishops who are, it seems like there's a bigger number of them who are gay.
Yeah, like learning.
And the ones who aren't gay are pro-gay. So I'm starting to think maybe they're all gay. Or a lot of them.
Even the ones that are not gay but pro-gay, I mean, look, you know, I still continue to believe that your local kind of out of the way, the not humongous parish, the small parishes, maybe the struggling parishes, the parish priests who are at those parishes, those are the guys to go to. I mean, if you're going to, if you have to be Novus Ordo and that kind of stuff, those are the guys to go to. The guys with the mega parishes, and certainly the bishops, seem to all have jumped onto this strange bandwagon, and it makes you wonder if they themselves, even if they're not, okay, you know, they're pro-gay, which is bad enough. Maybe they're gay, which is bad. We know that that there was a intentional infiltration of the church hierarchy by the homos. But even if they're not, is there some kind of higher prevalence among the bishops, the priests who end up with the mega parishes and so forth, of just letting themselves enjoy sinful pleasures, that, you know, gay or straight, whatever, but just lustful. You know, that would explain it, even without the whole gay thing.
That's what it seems. And so, you know, here we are talking about the bishops, and, you know, I always thought if a guy's got any sense of at all, he would at least, if someone's saying these things about me, I really would take a hard look at my life and say, hey, am I missing something here?
Wait a minute. Yeah, hold on now. That's
They'll never do that, I don't think.
Right.
I think they sincerely believe, some of them anyway, sincerely believe that they are good people for being so permissive of this lifestyle, or good people for being gay,
living it themselves.
They consider it a virtue. I think.
That's the inversion. Their appetite has become the governor and ruler of their intellect, and so they really do believe that.
And
it's
so
not
people
like
like
God's
us,
cut them any slack for it, but they really do believe it. They're sincere in that sense. But you know, sincerity can lead to hell.
And people like us are enemies of goodness.
Yeah,
that's why Pope Francis constantly dogs on the tradies,
the TLM,
for being rigid.
So did he say something? I mean, I've heard a couple of times in a certain podcast, and I don't know whether it was a direct quote or an indirect quote, or whether it was just a sort of interpretation of a collection of quotes. Did he say something about anytime you find a young person who really wants to go to the traditional mass, you're going to find some psychological disorder?
Yeah. You know what? Let's look that up.
Yeah, fine. Because, I mean, that is itself just diabolical. That's straight from the devil, if he said that.
Denigrate rigid young Catholics.
I know the rigidness thing.
I always try to understand what's behind people who are too young to have experienced the preconciliar liturgy, yet nonetheless desire it. Sometimes I found myself confronted with a very strict person with an attitude of rigidity, and I asked myself, why so much rigidity? Dig, this rigidity always hides something, insecurity, or even something else. Rigidity is defensive. True love is not rigid.
Okay, yeah, no, that's straight from the devil. That's a siren song. That's right out of hell. That he said something like that.
And you see this when you go to the Latin Mass. You see a higher percentage of young people than at the Novus Ordo. No, I
not
between the young
that,
and the old.
But they're smiling and joyful young people. It's like, oh wow, I feel I missed out on a lifetime of that when I see all these smiling, joyful young people. And I remember my experience of going to Mass as a teenager, as a young adult. It's like, yeah, okay, I got to put up with it.
Gotta go to Mass. And
gotta go to Mass.
And they seem, I will admit, there's an age of kids where they're not going to be able to, I don't want to say not going to be able to, but there's an age of kids who are not generally won't enter into the prayers fully. But
yeah, that's kids. That's the nature of childhood.
We're talking about kids. Yeah,
you train them.
But but you can see how most of the family is genuinely they have reverence.
Yeah.
A pretty deep reverence about what's going on at the altar. There's and kind of a love for it. And I don't know why they can't be true love. Because love for God is the truest of all love. And you see it in the eyes of people in the TLM. And you don't see it in the eyes of people at the Novus Ordo. Well, you do see it sometimes. But more often than not, if they love their place there,
I don't think I've ever seen it at a Novus Ordo.
It's because they love the fellowship that they think they're getting from the Novus Ordo.
Yeah, I've not seen that love of God in the eyes of people at a Novus Ordo the way you see it at the TLM.
You go to a big parish, and there's always like one or two guys that seem to be very much in love with God, and you see them stay after Mass and pray, and you see them come early and pray. But it's like out of the entire parish, just a couple of people.
One or two people, and even like at the smaller parishes, you see, now at the smaller parishes, you see people who they at least sincerely want to love God.
Right.
But you don't see that, that same thing that you see at the TLM. And it's almost as though they have this sincere desire and they come to Mass and it's not quite opened up to them how to fulfill that desire to love God.
Yeah.
Now, the mega parishes, it's all about the performance and the band and all that kind of stuff. That's just, I mean, it's still a good Mass if the priest says the right words, you receive Holy Communion. But gosh, the weekend, it's more like one priest up in Michigan, he used to describe it as the weekend experience. And he even used, he said there's 3 or 4 components. He said like there's hymns, there's homily, there's hospitality, which means greeting and stuff like that. And then there's something else. There were like 4 H's. All of them were like, kind of like the physical, emotional. And I even wrote to him, I said, you forgot the most important H, which is the host. That's the weekend experience, the host. He said, well, but this plan, I've talked to the bishop about it, and he approved it. Real like deflection on the topic, on the point. Which showed me that he's probably right. He did talk to the bishop. The Bishop of Michigan, or Detroit, was worthless when I was up there. I think he's the same bishop today. That people absolutely at these larger parishes, it's all about the emotional injection. At the smaller parishes, there's a really sincere desire, sometimes even among the priests, to give people this opportunity to truly love God and contemplate the mysteries. But it just doesn't unfold the way the TLM does when you're stuck with the Novus Ordo, and that's all you're allowed to do.
I'm starting to think that the TLM will give you something that is impossible to receive from the Novus Ordo. Mm-hmm. I'm really starting to think that again, that's not to say the Novus Ordo isn't valid, but
Yeah.
We only know what we see in something like this. And we see all the effects of the Novus Ordo, and we see now we have this sharp contrast of people who have gone back to the TLM, and you could argue, well, they're at the TLM because of this love for God, and maybe that's true, but it still deepens the love for God, and the Novus Ordo just doesn't.
It's you have to constantly. It's a big effort. You have to push yourself again and again at the Novus Ordo to even be directly attentive to this intention to love God through the sacrifice of the cross.
You literally have to block out what's going on around you.
The TLM practically carries you there.
Yeah.
It's like you have to make an effort not to do it at the TLM. Once you've been there and acclimated to it and really understand it. I don't want people to.
Yeah, it's not a magic wand or anything.
You go there and it's some kind of like just automatic magic bullet, and suddenly like the light shining down through the window, like in the Blues Brothers and stuff like that. It's not like that.
It doesn't happen immediately, but who was Bishop Fulton Sheen, which I don't understand why he's not Saint Fulton Sheen, but I think it was him who mentioned it, like being out in the sun. You go there and you're there and you don't notice anything right away, but if you spend 15 minutes a day, eventually you start to get more and more tan. If you go to and spend time in front of the Eucharist, but for some reason it's like at a Novus Ordo, well, as you had pointed out, it's like putting a bathroom glass or tinted glass in front of it. You don't get the light. But in the TLM, you get this direct light that you can't get anywhere else. Or at least you can't get at the Novus Ordo.
That's interesting. I never heard that analogy from
I think it was him.
No. Sure. I mean, I have not watched or read a lot of from Fulton Sheen, so it probably was him. But I was going to say that's a really neat analogy. I would have taken it to the analogy of like getting a sunburn. You go out in the sun, you have no idea it's happening because you don't feel hot, and then suddenly you realize you're burned. But the thing is, it's okay. A sunburn is a bad thing, but the point is, you want to be on fire for Christ. And so that exposure through the TLM, the more you do that, you don't even notice it, but it happens. You get burned in a good way.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. I'm trying to think of how I thought of this so that it would make sense. If you go to a Novus Ordo, a lot of what you're there for is the oral things happen around you, people talking and the priest talking and hearing his sermons
and the music playing and the mood music. People can't do Novus Ordos these days without mood. It's like, for heaven forbid, we have a moment of silence. If somebody's not talking or singing, I got to play music.
Unless they're waiting for somebody to walk across the floor reverently to get to the podium where they can talk.
Oh, yeah, then you got to watch them walk.
Everybody stop and listen to him walk. And there's no prayer going on in that time. It's just you're waiting. That's it. Mm-hmm. You're waiting. I was thinking about Scripture and the Eucharist, and it occurred to me that because so much of it is live talking and teaching in the Novus Ordo, when someone tells you about Scripture, you could take it in several different ways, and you could interpret it in several different ways, which is why we have Protestantism, because 10,000 and 10,000 different people interpreted it differently. But when it comes to the Eucharist, and it's not to say that you can't get holiness from Scripture, but it's holiness that can easily be warped.
Yeah.
But when you when you go to the Eucharist,
need the authority of the church. You need a sort of intellectual intermediary in the church when it comes to Scripture.
Yeah. But when you go to the Eucharist, the holiness you receive from that is not subject to translation. It is what it is. You receive the holiness so long as you're in a grace that can receive it, because you can only receive so much according to how much grace you have, and you obtain that grace by continually striving for it. But it's more available at the TLM.
It's kind of like, I mean, that's Christ himself. That's, it's kind of like, I've heard a couple people refer to the vagaries of the written word, which, Scripture is, and Scripture is the Word of God, and therefore is to correctly be identified with even the Eucharist. But it is nonetheless a written word. And so you can think of knowing a person, this is a loose analogy, through letters versus being in the room with the person directly and encountering them directly. So and the TLM amplifies
the TLM
that.
Focuses on that. Yeah, it's puts a lens in front of it so you can.
That, but the Novus Ordo obscures that. That's the problem. It's the TLM amplifies that while the Novus Ordo obscures that.
Yeah, and it doesn't put you in the proper. It doesn't give a good atmosphere for receiving Christ. It's so focused on other people that I'm sorry, you simply cannot get the grace necessary to receive our Lord fully at the Novus Ordo.
Unless you ignore those other people.
Yeah. If you're able to ignore everything around you, then okay. But nobody does that.
Kind of, yeah. I would even argue that the Novus Ordo, the way it's structured, is, I want to be careful, because I'm not a theologian, nor am I a liturgist, but it seems to me that the way it's structured, the Novus Ordo even makes fewer graces available to people, and here's why. In the traditional Mass, there are actually two Masses that occur. A lesser Mass and a greater Mass. The lesser Mass, you'll see it in the old missals. It's called the Mass of the Catechumens. Today we call it the Liturgy of the Word. In the lesser Mass of the TLM, certain scriptural passages, the Word of God, which St. John in his Gospel says, the Word is Jesus Christ, the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to find answers.
No, I hear somebody in the background. I'm going to wait till they're done before I go on.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The
Liturgy of the Word.
We take the Word of God, and in the TLM, that Word of God, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Word of God, Jesus Christ himself, is offered to the Father. The Scripture readings are prayers to the Father in the TLM. When they're being read to the Father. And so there was an offering of the Son to the Father in the Mass of the Catechumens when the readings and the Gospel are being read. And then, sometimes for the benefit of the faithful, the congregation, they're reread, maybe in the vernacular or something like that, before the sermon is preached. But their primary place is an offering to the Father. And because it's scriptural, it's an offering of the Son to the Father, and we've received the graces of that offering of the Son to the Father, which is eternal and going on all the time. And then the Mass of the Faithful, which the non-baptized used to not be allowed to attend, that happens again, except it happens more perfectly and completely. So in the Mass of the Catechumens, the Son was offered to the Father in the modality of Holy Scripture, and in the Mass of the Faithful, the Son is offered to the Father in the modality of the Incarnation under the forms of bread and wine, in which we ourselves directly partake and participate then. So there's a... I have to think that in the Novus Ordo, because in the Novus Ordo, that first part, that lesser Mass, the minor Mass of offering the Son to the Father, that doesn't exist. The readings are not read to the Father. They're not proclaimed to the Father as a prayer. They're read to the people. So we completely miss out on the opportunity to enter into that gift of the Son to the Father in that lesser Mass of the catechumens when we attend the Novus Ordo.
Yeah. It's...
Now, I don't know if any other liturgists and theologians would agree with me putting it that way, but that's the way it seems to me. And that's why the official TLM has never said, oh, the readings, they'll be read in the local language or whatever, even though the sermon is preached in the local language.
So part of the changes that were made is that, hey, we're reading these, we should use this opportunity to teach the people the gospel so that they can grow in knowledge and wisdom. But because what we did actually was obscure the real point of it, people grew in knowledge and wisdom less. And now we've got ignorance. This weird situation where most Catholics don't even know why they're in church.
Yeah. You know what? I hesitate to bring this, to make this analogy, but because I don't want to be heard as saying, because the Novus Ordo, if it's a legitimate and valid Mass, it is still the sacrifice of the Son to the Father, and therefore it is still a good thing, and therefore it is still pleasing to God when it's executed. Now, when it's executed and deliberately it is done non-liturgically or in ways that are not in conformance, those particular acts on the part of, say, the priest or whoever else are offensive to God, but the Mass itself is still pleasing to God. And so I don't want to be seen as saying that it's this thing that's unpleasing to God, but there's a kind of analogy, and it's only analogy that I want to say this, but it's kind of this. If you think of marriage, well, the whole point of marriage is, children and raising children, but first of all, bringing about children. And therefore, you've got sex involved. And so in a very real way, the point of marriage is sex. But if you take someone, especially a child, a young person, but even, an older person, maybe even somebody who's already married, and what you expose them to is that aspect of the marital, like the marital act, but not in the marital context. Now, this is where the analogy breaks down and is incomplete. But the point is, even if you expose them within the marital act, I'm talking about pornography, obviously. Yeah. Even if you said, okay, we'll get couples to do pornography, then it'll be okay.
Yeah, it's only married couples.
But the point is this: by exposing somebody too much to that directly, you actually obscure the point of marriage, even though that is the point of marriage. It's a weird kind of paradox. And I think that happens in the Novus Ordo as well. By deciding that the whole purpose of the Liturgy of the Word is to expose people to Scripture, you end up obscuring both the meaning of the Liturgy of the Word and the meaning of the Liturgy of the Eucharist.
And then you decide that everybody can come in and see this part, and it's out of context.
Yeah,
because we were talking about last week the fact that you don't cast pearls before swine.
Right. How often have you seen, priests? In fact, the same priest in Michigan is talking about the 4 H's or whatever,
yeah.
Shoot, I don't know why I didn't think of that. I called it the 4-H Club.
4-H Club.
But the thing is, I can't remember whether it's 4 H's or 3 H's. It could have just been hospitality.
Okay.
It's like one of them meant food, but there's hymns, homily, and hospitality. Maybe that's what it is. The 3 H's or something like that. Anyway, He literally said, and sermon after sermon after sermon, his goal is to get you to go out and get the Joe in your neighborhood and bring them to Mass with you. Well, why would you do that?
Yeah.
That's
the Mass isn't
stupid.
there
That's
to
not,
evangelize.
That's like, say, hey, I won't go into the analogy again, but the point is, that's not how people learn the faith. That's not how people get introduced to Christianity. It should be, the Mass is the word Mass comes from the Latin missa, which means sending out. The Mass is for us, the already baptized. And then we get sent out to go evangelize other people, to teach them about Jesus Christ, to teach them the good news, to tell them there's a way to salvation. And then once they have learned and accepted and given their intellectual assent, once they've given their intellectual assent to the teachings of the church, then they become baptized, and then they enter into the Mass with us. And that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Not, oh, hey, you know what? You might be a good Catholic. Why don't you come to Mass with me?
Yeah.
That's a completely wrong way to evangelize.
The other analogy is going into kindergarten and pulling a couple of kids out and say, hey, we're going to make these kids really smart. And sitting them in the trigonometry class or calculus class. And I mean, the kids are just sitting there like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And they're never going to
and in the
pick
meantime,
it up
you've ruined them for
by
life
osmosis.
when it comes to math. I mean, even if you put them back in the kindergarten class, they're going to, it's like, well, no way, I have no use for math at all. That was such a bad experience.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, other than the rare cases where somebody's kind of predisposed for this stuff, you can't evangelize by showing someone the Eucharist. They're just not ready for that.
And those cases do exist, but here's my firm, sincere belief. Those cases are cases where the Holy Spirit would have led that person somehow into the presence of the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Without all of this modern focus on, hey, go get your buddy and see if he'll come to Mass with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because of this backwards way of doing things, we've turned most Catholics into spiritual idiots. And I think the folly that Thomas Aquinas was talking about gets easier and easier. And the problem right now is that it's not even something that they would hide. It used to be that bishops would make these bad decisions and they would hide them. And if they were caught, they would have some kind of halfway plausible explanation. This is why I did this and this is why I did that. Or at least denying that they knew about something. But
now they don't even care.
Yeah, it's whatever. Yeah, this is how we do things now because this is the new church, or this is the new way of thinking where just common sense stuff doesn't matter anymore. We don't do that anymore. We don't think things out, and we don't have reasons for doing what we're doing other than I want to.
Yeah, it's the church of nonsense.
It's happening within the church to Catholics. The same way it's happening more and more in America to the conservatives. People who call themselves conservative are still, 10 years ago, something like gay marriage wouldn't have even been thinkable. It would have been laughed out.
Yeah,
I mean, there were cities.
It was a. What do you mean, gay marriage? I mean, you may as well,
have dog marriage or.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Now there were cities like San Francisco that were absolutely full of gays, and so you knew that kind of thing happened. And they've taken over the legislature there, and so it's going to happen on the law books too. But they were little corners of America that, we tolerated. But
everybody kind of knew those. It was like, Oh yeah, San Francisco. You know, the eye roll that always went with even the mention of the city, San Francisco.
Yeah, he's from San Francisco. Oh, okay, so he's one of those.
Yeah.
But because of the sinful, the prevalence of sin, especially lust, in our culture today, even well-thinking people have been so tainted by this inability, by this folly, and this inability to recognize something that's wrong.
You know, I almost wonder if this was not a masterful play by Satan, that, you know, he managed to grow up these like pockets of homo, I don't know, acceptability or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then because, you know, Satan is always one of those, if you're going to fall off the log to the right or the left, he doesn't care as long as you fall off the log.
Yeah.
And so you've got this whole thing about this homo behavior, and he got, I think, maybe a lot of people who were inclined to be conservatives and resist that and recoil from that. But as long as it wasn't homo, then what it did was open them up to accepting in themselves and thinking it was okay in themselves to have other kinds of lustful activity.
Like just pornography,
whether it's pornography,
masturbation, and
using prostitutes, whatever.
Prostitutes,
yeah. And so it's kind of, and then by doing that, I mean, and who knows? I mean, maybe this is stuff that was going on in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Obviously not with the internet, but and so it was kind of, if that's the case, then society was kind of primed just because of the suppression of the intellect that goes along with attaching oneself to these kinds of sins. Society was primed to just go ahead and give up the supremacy of the intellect altogether. And so now, even when it comes to things that have nothing to do with sexuality, people are so ready to just accept and go along with arguments that are utter nonsense and statements that are just complete lunacy, whether it has to do with race or transgender or whatever.
Or COVID.
COVID, yeah.
I mean, that's that's the like prime example right now.
The bishop of the archdiocese, the archdiocese of the U.S. military was getting on board. He's on board with the idea of the military just simply requiring the COVID vaccine. It's like, well, hey, the CDF said that you can justify it in your conscience, so yeah, you ought to be okay with us mandating it.
Because they're the
CDF
experts on...
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, let's practice dulling and numbing our consciences over a thing that isn't needed because of the demographics of the disease itself within the military. Mm-hmm. And as it's turning out more and more, we realize doesn't work. People, we've all been vaccinated. Oh, but y'all got it anyway. Oh, well, maybe it would have been worse if we hadn't been vaccinated. You know, stupid stuff like that.
And not to mention
a Catholic bishop who, I mean, bishops ought to be the best thinkers in the world.
Yeah. And
this guy's an idiot when it comes to this stuff. This what was his name? The bishop of the military archdiocese, Timothy Broglio. He's an idiot.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I used to engage in political and religious arguments just whenever I could. I mean, I went out of my way to find them.
I mean, let's face it, it's fun, okay?
It is fun.
Especially, but there comes a point, I mean, it's fun to do when somebody is capable but wrong.
Yeah. It's fun to have a challenge.
When you realize it's like, okay, wait, you are so incapable of even this engagement. It's like, okay, this is really dumb. It's not even fun anymore.
Yeah, I like arguing about maybe creationism, and sometimes I'll get into a discussion with someone and we go through evidence. What do we have evidence for? And every now and then, and more, I'm catching people who will argue, will try to produce evidence that we're just living in a matrix and that this is not a real world. And again, you there's no response to that because it's so stupid.
It's like, yeah, that's good. Talk about folly. I think that's one of the things that, Aquinas would have called folly.
Yeah, and if you convince yourself that the what's real isn't real, I see no reason for anything anymore. No reason to be good, or
if you want to, if you want to think that's what it is, then go do whatever.
I know philosophers have come up with this that there's no real reality, and they were supposed to be brilliant. They're not brilliant at all. They're idiotic, and their philosophy doesn't help anyone do or accomplish anything. Just because it's an argument that can't be countered doesn't make it a good argument. I'm thinking here, I've heard Dinesh D'Souza talk about a philosopher who does this.
Yeah.
Who argues that there is no real reality, that everything is not real. And there's no argument, but there's no argument in the same way that you have a kid who wants something, and instead of giving it to him, you say no, and then they start the why game. Why?
Yeah,
well, not.
I tend to think
that's
of it as
not an
argument.
argument. That's just
logic. It's like feminine. It's like it's like well, if you love me, then why did you forget to do this? Kind of logic. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's a non sequitur. The one doesn't follow from the other. The two aren't linked like that. My imperfections as a human being isn't a some kind of direct link to my indication of love for you. Yeah, you get this feminine logic, and but
feminine
people, feminine.
I couldn't hear what you were saying. Okay. Wow, a lot of people are going to get irritated
all
at
the
that.
Time.
Yeah, but they all do
but
it.
But liberals
that's always
use it
a question from
in ways that are completely unconnected with that, but it's basically the same kind of logic.
If you're so good, why aren't you wearing your mask?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know. We could get into discussion about mask usage and what that does for a person.
Oh, wait,
but
you didn't get vaccinated? You must want to kill everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. Okay, I guess you're just one of those stupids that, the Bible says don't argue with a fool because people might not know who is who.
Yeah. And they get so deeply entrenched in this way of thinking that I guess
consideration of proportionality and that kind of stuff doesn't even come into it for them. They're incapable of putting that into their way of thinking. I guess that's what is indicative of people talk about ideological ways of thinking versus rational ways of thinking. And that's what it's like people, Catholics, bishops, liberals have become ideological about certain things. And it's like, well, I can't even bother to accept a process that's rational because I have to remain true to this ideology.
Yeah, and instead they replace these logical processes for buzzwords or buzz phrases that make them feel like they must be smart because they can use a word like systemic racism and things like that. And it's
hey, wait, that's a 3-syllable word. I'll sound really smart if I use that. Hey, do you know a 4-syllable word I could use? I'll use that instead if I can, because then I'll be super smart.
Yeah, and I guess a long time ago I would have said I would continue to argue, even though, and a lot of times it's because especially if you're, say, at a party or there are people kind of listening in, you want the truth to come out. So you allow them enough rope to hang themselves, and you pull this logical noose around their neck, and then suddenly that's it. They might continue arguing, but everybody knows it's over.
Well, yeah, but now they say this stuff stuff that's so stupid, and everybody else at the party thinks that it's meaningful.
Right. Well, there's like two classes. It's come to this, that there's two groups. One group knows how dumb it is.
Yeah.
And the other group doesn't. And so that other group who's swallowed the Kool-Aid, it doesn't matter what else they hear. They're still rooting for the other guy because they think that is how... I don't know what they think. I don't think they do think.
It's not thinking. It's a question of appetite. They want the other reality to be the right one. They want a certain kind of world to exist. They have an appetite for that because it serves their desires. And anyone who want it, and they've subjugated their intellect to that, that's why they're rooting for the other guy. They don't think at all.
And anyone who's opposed to that should be crushed. In either publicly humiliated or... Actually, it's more than that because it's turned into such a hatred. For example, Pope Francis's mention of traditional Catholics. Where they want the other side to feel pain.
Into an irrational
they don't even
hatred.
Want to convert people. They just want to destroy.
If you could... Okay, so like the term phobia refers to an irrational fear of something.
Yeah.
If we could come up with a similar kind of Greek word that referred to an irrational hatred of something, it's not just fear, but hatred of it, a irrational loathing of something.
See, that's what they tried to do with things like
that's
homophobia.
That's what Pope Francis has, for example, towards, TLM lovers. And a lot of liberals have towards, people who just want to try to make a better world and retain our freedoms and not become, a socialist dictatorship.
Yeah, tradophobia. But the thing is, when homophobia first started being talked about, I thought, why do they say I'm not scared of gay people? Why would he call me
what does that
homophobic?
Even mean? That's such a stupid term.
I don't fear them. I just don't like them. But there should be
what it really was
a better
an
word
anti-homophobia. It was an admission on the part of the homos that they're afraid that people who think clearly are not going to let them keep engaging in their sinful activity.
Yeah.
That's
and they
what
wanted more and more for the sinful activity to be seen and openly accepted by everyone around them who wasn't homosexual.
Yeah.
And it was easier to accomplish that when more and more men, especially men, were kind of drowning in this... kind
of pornified...
A lot of the double life that pornography addicts live. And as pornography kind of saturated into the family life over the past 15 years... It got easier for men to excuse deviance, as you were talking about earlier. And it got easier it was an easy sell for the gays. Because there was so much deviance going on. A lot of it not even on the surface. It was behind the scenes, I think, in a lot of families.
Even among men, men who may be in positions of lawmaking and stuff like that, judges, even among men who may not have, because of their own, deviant inclinations that they may have given into, their own attachments to various forms of sin, maybe they didn't agree with... the homo agenda, for example, and again, the whole homo thing is just one big example of the broader topic we're talking about, which is the loss of sanity in the modern Western world. Because of sin, they lost the ability in their own minds to articulate the argument against sin.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, you expect this kind of thing to happen in the secular world. I mean, it happened in Rome. It happened in Greece. It happened in France. but we never thought that it would happen so completely in God's church.
Yeah, within
not completely.
The whole Catholic, and that's the thing.
But,
I mean, you know, you see bishops, you see the mega priests. I mean, heck, the priest who was the pastor up at, the priest that the parish that our brother up in Westchester often goes to.
Yeah.
St. Maximilian Kolbe. Okay, he's not there anymore. He was there when I lived up there. Since then, I found out that he himself has been, and he always gave off a little bit of a creep vibe to me.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a mega church kind of a feel. It was like, oh yeah, this isn't for to join Christ in offering to the Father. This is for the band and the music and the sermon and the so on and so forth. But he himself was then, after I had left, some charges came up way back in his past before he became a priest, about some inappropriate interactions with minors and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Bishops, the more influential, larger parish priests, and a lot of the laity have lost their ability to discern matters of the spirit, matters of morality, matters of right living, matters of right action within the church, because of their own attachments to sins, which they then find some way to justify, because that's, it's like you have to either justify it or you have to become, somewhat depressed by your own, shamed by it, so.
And look, it might sound like we're coming up with, I don't know, not a conspiracy theory, but we're pessimistic about it all because things can't really be that bad. But this, not long ago we were talking about this guy who's in charge of the priest formation at a seminary.
Turns out he's a grinder
that turns
user.
out bishops. Yeah. This
It's
is how bishops are formed, through this guy. So why is it in any way a stretch to just assume? But you know what? We don't even have to pretend
this
that
is
way.
Still up just today in 2021.
Yeah,
I mean, this is something that we discuss. It's not like, oh yeah, wow, they had this guy back in the 80s who was like this,
right?
And he was, in charge of priests. And that's why today we have all these priests, and we just have to. So we've got a generation of them. We just got to wait for them to age out or whatever. No, this is like now that this guy was discovered.
Yeah, Patrick Coffin recently had on one of his podcasts a guy who was suing that seminary and suing Bishop Dolan.
Earl, right?
Is that the guy in New York?
Oh
no.
Oh, Dolan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's suing Dolan because
Dolan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he was discriminated against because he was straight, and
really?
because I guess they thought because of the way he acted that maybe he would, I don't know, come out against the gays that he knew were there. I think they were kind of afraid of him, but this was discrimination.
We can't let this guy,
based on sexual
he's not
orientation.
Only straight, but he's somebody who's going to call out.
He doesn't
those
like
who
us.
Are gay,
yeah,
within our ranks.
And he never did that, but he was discriminated against for his sexual orientation, and this is the Bishop of New York.
Yeah,
the guy who seems to be fighting the. To bring that subject up again, the canonization of Fulton Sheen.
Yeah,
It seems like that's happening.
There was some kind of weird, like a...
like the body of his body was, I don't know.
Had to do with
they
his
wouldn't hand
body.
it over or something.
Because Fulton Sheen is from, like, Illinois or something like that, right?
I don't know.
And so I think the diocese that he's from would like his body to be there as part of their diocese.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
And so there's this dispute, and then because of this dispute, his case for canonization is being held up. I mean, it's just stupid.
Yeah. And we've got, Mother Teresa, who is canonized like a year after she's dead? Yeah. Not that she shouldn't be, but I think Fulton Sheen was every bit as important. It's not more important, maybe.
Right.
But his, what he said wasn't always safe.
Well, the thing is, Mother Teresa's, all the things that she said had to do largely with, caring for the
charity.
The
corporal acts of charity.
People fall through the cracks and stuff like that. Now, she was absolutely solid, for example, when it came to abortion. Even with all the poverty she saw in the world, she didn't cut any slack when it came to abortion. That was not a solution. And I have no problem with her being a saint. But the thing is, with Bishop Sheen, the things that he said in his life could be taken, I think, as direct indictments against a lot of the bishops today.
Yeah, and because he had a different job.
Yeah, exactly.
He wasn't there to take care of the sick and the poor. He was there to teach. He was a bishop and to proclaim the truth. And
like one of the main. He's like the proto-modern bishop. He saw opportunities to use modern technology to get the true gospel out there and teach it to people. And
he was, I guess, if you were going to compare him to someone, you might compare him to Mother Angelica. But
yeah, the EWTN, right?
He didn't create a network. It was just him and what he said. And I don't know. I think you're right. His thinking was so solid, and his sermons were so solid, and nowadays most people have never even heard him, which is a shame, because a lot of them have heard sermons or talks from people like Mother Angelica, but Mother Angelica she had a different kind of job too. First of all, she was a nun, but
not a bishop.
She wasn't an intellectual, really. Mm-hmm. And, well, I guess in the end, it's becoming more and more important to decide what kind of people you're going to engage when you're testifying to the truth. Because
it's like, okay, don't waste your time once you realize that this person has given up their intellectual capacity to understand.
And I think Jesus was the same way. When he saw that someone is simply unwilling to see the truth, he didn't waste time arguing with them or teaching them. Mm-hmm. He said a few parting words, and that was it. And it was like, Yeah,
that's why he told the apostles when he sent them out in pairs, he said, when you go into a town, if they don't receive you, which he meant if they don't listen to the words you're preaching them, which are my words, shake the dust from the town off your feet and go to the next town.
Yeah.
Don't even bother with them. They're the swine. Don't cast your pearls before them. Once you discover that they're swine, move on. Yeah. And I think that's what we should be doing. And perhaps in doing so, maybe we would find that there are a lot more who are not swine, and we might have a chance of preventing the utter collapse of Western civilization, for example.
Right. And one of the problems is that there are a lot of swine in positions of leadership in our church.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And
exactly.
And
it's like, it's not just liberals and enemies of the church. It's leaders of the church who have given themselves over to this and who are no longer capable of hearing the truth and engaging rationality and understanding.
Yeah, and it's been our theme for several weeks now, maybe several months, to point out that, again, they're either really dumb or really bad. And I'm starting to realize that it's both of them, and one supports the other. And I'm not going to pretend that they're not these things. I'm not going to pope-splain anymore. I've stopped doing that a long time ago, and I'm not going to bishop-splain anymore.
That's right. When
our bishops are making terrible decisions.
Does or says something bad, evil, diabolical, let's call it out for what it is.
You show me a bishop who told his priests, hey, keep the churches open. Don't you dare close them. I'll come bail you out when they arrest you.
That's the bishop.
You show me that, then I'll know we have a real bishop.
That's the bishop we want to get behind. Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's, even though there are a lot of swine out there, even in the laity, there's also a lot of men who would get behind a bishop like that. And a lot of families. And a lot of women. We need someone to step up. Anyone.
And who would go to those masses. I mean, and a lot of good women who would support their husbands might be thinking, well, wait a minute, I can't risk my family, that kind of stuff. And they're why I think there's a lot of good women who would say, no, you need to go to this mass, and even if it means being arrested, because this is what we need. We need more masses, and we need more people attending masses. If the bishop is saying let's do it, and if the priests are doing it, and the governor's saying no, you can't do that, I think there are still a lot of good women in America who would tell their husbands, go to mass, take the kids to mass. Yeah,
and there are people in jail right now for the quote storming of the Capitol.
Oh gosh! Man, what a
First of all, I don't think any of them were expecting this, but I think some people were there expecting some kind of activity that would demonstrate our strength and resolve. And I don't think they in any way expected to still be in jail, but I think some of them did expect maybe for there to be something.
To get processed and booked or something like that, yeah.
Right. The thing is, they're in jail still, and they're being persecuted.
Turned into nothing short of political persecution. This isn't even religious persecution. It's just pure.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because maybe, but it's not political, it's not religious directly. And those guys in jail, on the one hand, they can sit and actually, there is a sense of pride they can get from the fact that they are suffering for the movement. But it's not a Catholic movement, and it's not necessarily a Christian movement. If we went to jail for going to church, we could go to jail knowing that we are suffering
directly for Christ.
A soft martyrdom. Yeah.
We're directly right. Our suffering, even though we're not being put to death, we're right there on the cross with him in our incarceration.
And there would be merit in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think we've about exhausted that.
Yeah, I mean the baseline is okay. Everybody, stay away from sin because it makes you stupid.
Yeah,
and it's made a lot of other people in the United States, including Catholics and bishops, stupid. So stay away from it.
And you're not going to convince any of them because they're stupid on purpose.
Yeah,
I mean, there might be people out there you can convince, but you have to see when you understand what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with someone who's purposely stupid, there's no point in talking anymore.
Drop it. Say, yeah, well, you're obviously
you're going to frustrate yourself.
Idiot. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about news.
All right.
Did you know it seems like half the world right now is burning? Not half the world.
Like forest fires?
There's a lot of places burning. Yeah, fires everywhere. California, of course. Last week I had said it was the 13th largest. Now it's the third largest wildfire in California's history.
This
is the Dixie Fire.
God.
Yeah, it burned down most of Greenville, California. And this is this has a large historic area in the downtown area, and I guess most of it's gone. But aside from that, there's regions in Italy. Okay. there's region, I don't know if Calabria, Calabria, Calabria. Yeah, one of those two. There's fires there. They're saying that some of these are because of what are they calling it? A heat bubble or a heat dome. They're saying there's a heat dome caused by climate change that is making everything burn. I don't, whenever they start talking like that, it's like, come on. It's just, but there are unprecedented heat waves. So I guess in the island of Sicily, we're seeing temperatures of 119.8 Fahrenheit, and it's pretty darn hot. I mean, that's desert hot. In Tunisia, we've got 120 degrees Fahrenheit. There's fires across Algeria. 69 fires altogether right now in Algeria. Now, smoke from the fires in Siberia are reaching the North Pole for the first time in recorded history. And I guess right now, most of Russia has kind of a ceiling of smoke around it because of these fires. There's a region in Russia, I think 8.4 million acres of land currently on fire. It's a big problem. It's hot right here. I was thinking today about how hot it was because I had to do some work on a machine, and I'm in a warehouse that has no air conditioning, and I didn't realize all this other stuff was going on. I was thinking, man, it's hot. This stinks. Yeah, I'm really hot. I ain't seen nothing. It's only it's probably close to 100 here, but geez, 110, 120. Wow. It's insane. Yeah. So a lot of places on fire. I don't know. It's kind of odd. I've never seen.
These are all places that probably experience fires. From time to time.
Yeah.
But, now of course California is just stupid about forest management.
Yeah.
So their fires tend to be worse.
Yeah.
Probably one of those things where the conditions were just right that these fires that happen from time to time in all these places are just happening all at once right now.
Yeah. They're saying that there's this dome of air from the Pacific formed over most of Europe, and it's kind of trapping the heat. I don't know if I buy that or not, but whatever. They're having a heat wave there, and there's a lot of fires.
Yeah.
The French Constitutional Council just approved all of these restrictions and requiring health passes to get into restaurants and shopping centers and any type of public transportation. People are fighting that more and more. You're seeing people protesting this, but it's happening across the world. I almost said, you know what, we need to do a podcast on whether or not the vaccine is the mark of the beast, because some people are treating it that way.
You gotta have your vaccine card to go into places and stuff like that. It's really goofy when you think about the fact that the vaccine doesn't even work and stupid stuff like that.
Right.
And then scary how much people are wanting to make it a qualifier for any kind of life.
Right. I don't know. Maybe we should do a little bit more research into it. Maybe bring it up next week.
Yeah.
Apple announces that it will continually scan the smartphones and tablets for sexual child abuse. I guess sexual abuse material. CSAM. Child sexual abuse material. I guess that kiddie-porn. I guess that's what that is.
Is that what they're talking about? But I mean, okay, obviously I'm against.
But I wonder if there's something else there.
Kiddie-porn and sexual abuse and that kind of stuff. But my point is this: that once you decide, once they decide, once everybody agrees, once it becomes kind of the norm that there's this sort of overlord that's watching all of your communications on your devices.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because the things that they use in order to justify that level of oversight on your individual communications could be a really evil thing, but that doesn't mean that's where they're going to stop.
Yeah.
It's like,
sure they
okay,
won't.
today it's kiddie porn, and 30 years from now, or 3 years from now, the way things seem to be accelerating, it's if you are seen too Christian, we're going to flag you or something.
Yeah. Another problem I kind of see with this is that because pornography has infiltrated so deep into families nowadays, younger and younger boys are paying attention to it.
Finding it and stuff.
When you've got, say, a 10-year-old who has his own phone and it's not monitored by his parents, and up the street there's a 10-year-old girl who has a phone and it's not monitored by her parents, and the two are over the phone playing doctor.
Oh, right.
Now suddenly this 10-year-old boy could be charged with something pretty dang serious when it's not really as serious as it would be for a man to have that.
Like
but let's say a boy uses his dad's phone.
Yeah. And now maybe the dad gets arrested for stuff he didn't even do.
Yeah, and he had no idea about.
His 10-year-old son did. Yeah. It could
so
lead to other
I don't know.
like that
I can see problems with that, but at the same time, there are things they could do to stop a lot of child sexual abuse and to stop human trafficking that they're not doing.
Yeah, well, they could start with our borders, right?
Right. So, British and American governments warn their citizens, get out of Afghanistan immediately.
Wow, okay.
So, I thought they would have done this a while ago, but I guess for some reason they had hope for a while, but the hope is gone, so get out of Afghanistan. Hopefully we don't have too many Americans there, but it's pretty bad there, and well, we knew it would be. I don't know what to say about it. It's a shame, but hey, we fended them off for 20 years, and apparently it did nothing. They just hid in the hills for 20 years,
Yeah.
And it didn't seem to change the people there. I mean...
Yep, that's the thing. It's like...
It sucks.
It's kind of a reality, I think. That was the flawed thinking from the beginning, is to think that we could go in and change the values of a people somewhere.
And, the thing is, okay, I can see that line of thought, but only when it comes to Christianity. You can't treat democracy like it's Christianity.
No, exactly.
Nobody wants to die for democracy. Well, maybe some people do.
Say, hey, we're going to evangelize. We're going to tell people the gospel. And sometimes the regime is going to rebel against it and going to persecute everybody who comes to the gospel. And sometimes the regime's going to accept it and embrace it. But we have to go everywhere and preach that. It's not the same way when it comes to democracy. Democracy does not equal Christianity. I think that's the wrong-headedness is Americans began to think that Christianity meant democracy and vice versa, or that democracy was like the worldly embodiment of Christianity or something like that. Right. It was when I say worldly embodiment, I meant in the sense that it was like
a manifestation,
the thing that can save.
Yeah. And the thing is, when we try to evangelize and people are put to death for their faith, well, then it makes the church stronger.
Yeah.
But not the same thing is true for democracy.
That's true.
It doesn't make democracy stronger. It just eliminates it in some cases.
Yeah.
It did in Vietnam, and it's doing so now in Afghanistan. It's a shame, but
that's the way
that's what it is. there was a priest murdered in France at a church, and this is the same guy who committed arson at Nantes Cathedral in July of 2020. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. If it happened in 2020, why is he walking around?
Yeah, that seems strange.
If he committed
why wasn't he
arson a year ago?
Unless he's like out on bail pending the trial or something like that.
Maybe that, or maybe they didn't know it was this guy. But the way I'm reading it, like, I guess they suspected him because he was the guy who committed arson. I could be wrong there. Let's see. Seafood company Grieg Seafood. Grieg? Grieg Seafood.
Grieg? I guess.
Grieg Seafood announces that it has accidentally dumped 4,000 gallons of chlorine into the Norwegian fjord, killing approximately 96,000 fish. The company apologizes. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry for killing the fish.
It's all right. That's it's just weird the way they reported that. The company apologizes, says it will handle the cleanup.
Oh, okay.
Because they got 96,000 fish to sell now.
We'll clean them up and...
Why would a seafood company have 4,000 gallons of chlorine anyway? I wonder what they use the chlorine for. I don't know. Well, anyway.
Maybe just to clean, instruments and knives and vats and stuff like that.
4,000 gallons?
Well, I mean, it's you got to think in industrial terms.
So if they, maybe their industry...
Fish, you catch a fish, maybe 3 fish, you come home, you fillet them, you bring it, you cook them up for dinner, whatever. But they're catching thousands of fish a day that they have
if they've got their
and prep and
factory
and
right there on the river.
Yeah, they got the factories there.
Yeah,
and then every so often, all of the factory equipment and tables and everything have to be wiped down and cleaned and disinfected and stuff.
And that made its way into the water. I don't know. It's. I feel sorry for the company heads in cases like this. It's like, like the guy in charge, the guy who's going to take the beating, probably had nothing to do with how the bleach or the chlorine was stored in the factory. You know what I mean?
Right. How it got into
Maybe
the water
he should have, but I don't know. Who would think that this is going to happen? You've got cleaning fluids to clean your factory, and it's like you don't even think, well, what if it breaks and leaks out? Where would it go?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well. Andrew Cuomo has announced he's going to resign. Because of the sexual harassment, not because of the thousands of people he murdered.
That's the thing that he should really be indicted on.
Yeah.
Which is the murder of old people in nursing homes.
Yeah. Not just the murder, but the torture as well, because these old, confused people who had no idea why they're alone.
That's right.
They just...
The murder, cruelty and murder.
Yeah, every time I think about that, jeez. Yeah, we bring it up almost every week here, but I wish there was something we could do about it, but we can't. So Amnesty International and Project Plowshares accused Justin Trudeau of violating the Arms Trade Treaty by supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia.
Huh. That's interesting.
And YouTube suspends the account of Senator Rand Paul for misinformation about masks.
Misinformation about masks? What did he say about masks?
I guess he has said that they're pointless and useless. Yeah, I have no idea.
Same thing we say about masks. They're pointless and useless.
Yeah. He said he's calling it a badge of honor being suspended by YouTube.
He's right. I think it's time for conservatives to start thinking that way and considering suspension from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. as a badge of honor. Yeah. Especially when it comes to misinformation. Hey, if you get suspended for misinformation, you're probably telling the truth about something.
We don't have enough subscribers to be suspended from YouTube.
I know.
When we do, then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll consider it a badge of honor.
Okay, I'm going to bring it up right now instead of later. Because we've been talking about the traditional Latin Mass, and I meant to bring it up first, and then I thought, okay, I'll bring it up before news, and then I forgot. So now I'm going to bring it up after news, but before nonsense news. Okay. If you go to our website, we have T-shirts available.
That's right.
That say, I'd rather be at the traditional Latin Mass, with the TLM in larger letters. So it reads, I'd rather be at the TLM. I think it'd be really cool for, although this wouldn't happen.
Church.
Yeah, but Novus Ordo, the guys who would rather be at the TLM would not wear a T-shirt to Mass. So I'm trying to work on a way to get him on polo shirts or something. But it would be cool for a whole family to walk into Mass all wearing shirts that say, I'd rather be at the TLM. Yeah, you can get them white with black print or black with white print, or various colors, but with the contrast between white and dark print. So go to our website and you can see that there. And hey, it would be really cool if we sold a bunch and people wore them from now on to the Novus Ordo. I'm going to get one, but I don't go to the Novus Ordo, so maybe I can go to a Novus Ordo just to wear that.
Just to wear one?
Yeah. The problem is half the people there wouldn't even know what the TLM is.
Yeah, TLM.
Maybe even the priest himself. Yeah, okay. All right, so that's all I got.
Okay. Well, I've got a few stories here. First of all, this is a story without a link. I'm just going to bring it up. I think I've talked before about some of the funny stuff that my wife encounters at the VA when she's doing her compensation and pension.
Yeah, when she does the test.
Right. And so a basic audiogram is done. The audiologist puts you in a booth. You can't see what they're doing because the audiologist has to, turn on a tone at different loudnesses, and you're supposed to respond when you hear the tone. And they will present them quieter and quieter, and some of them you won't hear. And of course, you don't respond because you didn't hear them. You don't know they're there. You raise your hand or say yes or something like when they're there. Now, sometimes it's kind of funny, I guess cute in a way. Really old people they kind of get a concept into their head of if I can hear it versus if I can hear it well. And so she's seen, when trying to do hearing tests in order to fit an old person for hearing aids or whatever, sometimes on the really, really quiet ones that they have to strain for to listen to, they'll see them shake their head when she presents the tone. Like, nope, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. No, I didn't hear that one. Like they put their hand halfway up.
So anyway, and that's just kind of a background thing. Well, what she does now is compensation and pension for veterans. They come in and they, they're claiming some kind of hearing loss, and so she does a test, and maybe 30% of them, 20% of them are trying in some way to kind of fake it. They want to try to make it look like they have a hearing loss, that maybe it's a little bit worse than it really is and stuff like that. Oh,
yeah, because of the veterans
you get paid for it. Yeah, you get a certain percent disability. Yeah. So anyway, she had this guy in the other week, and he's not responding to the tones, and finally she broke in with the mic. She said, "Are you hearing these tones?" He said, "Well, I heard the third one."
That's good. I heard the third one, not the first two, though. Yeah.
Anyway.
That's pretty good.
Just wanted to bring that up. Okay. So first nonsense thing. You can get nature sometimes to do your dirty work for you if you know how. This woman was at some kind of a event you know, I don't think that it was even an event. It was just like maybe at campgrounds or something like that. Anyway, sort of a relaxing time away from home. And these people pulled up in a caravan next to, or in a camper next to her, and were just playing loud music all night. She couldn't get to sleep. Her kids were there. They couldn't get to sleep, that kind of stuff. So they stayed up all night. And of course, you know, staying up all night, they intend to sleep well into the afternoon. So before they headed off, I think it was before they headed off, she took a bunch of breadcrumbs, and this is like near the coast. She took a bunch of breadcrumbs and just threw them up on top of their camper's roof. So all the seagulls would come and squawk and fight over the breadcrumbs.
That's pretty good.
So anyway, yep. Sometimes you can.
That reminds me of the Crocodile Dundee, where he takes he makes that bat bait and puts it all over the bad guys, and then he calls the bats.
Oh, that's right.
All these giant fruit bats come down and land on him, trying to eat the bat fruit.
That's right.
That's good though.
Okay,
and you'd have a hard time understanding why it's happening, but yeah.
If you were one of those, like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay, so this mom wanted to, you know, she having a birthday for her for her daughter or whatever, and has her friends over. So, you know, like birthdays, a lot of times people will like have a clown come in or something like that, something to entertain the kids, kind of a little bit of a treat. They used to do, you know, back in the day, it might be that somebody came in who like was one of those show cowboys kind of thing. With the guns on the side. Well, this mom's choice of entertainer sent the kids screaming in terror. She hired Bigfoot.
The kid was afraid of Bigfoot.
Bigfoot comes in and the kids all scream and run away.
I wonder, how old was the kid? Did he not?
Let me see if it says the age.
Did he express interest in Bigfoot at some point?
Well, I don't know. It's like they just talk about child's birthday. 6.
I thought you were going to say that 6.
Yeah,
that's pretty young for a Bigfoot. I can imagine.
I know, that's what
scared.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, dude, you hired a monster to work at your birthday party.
A 6-year-old's birthday party. Anyway, eventually they got the kids to come around, and there's a photo showing the kids, standing there with Bigfoot and everything. But
take his mask off. It's just a person. I always thought it was funny putting, and there's a whole line full of kids or parents whose kids are shy anyway, and they're trying to sit them on Santa's lap, and it's like the kid doesn't want to be there. Why are you trying to force this?
Yeah, exactly.
And he starts screaming the second he's there. It's like,
come on, just don't make the kid do that.
Yeah,
if he doesn't want to, let the kid ask on his own before you even get in line.
See Santa.
That's the thing.
Yeah, if he doesn't know who Santa is, there's no reason to put him there. And then just so you can get your picture of the baby with Santa.
Right.
And even if the baby seems content with it, he doesn't know why he's sitting on this red guy's lap.
I'm trying to think if I ever got a picture taken on a Santa's lap when I was little. I can't remember.
I don't know if I did.
Yeah. Anyway,
I know my kids have, because my wife has always taken them to see. Oh, well, you know what? My wife's uncle played Santa at a local thing.
Oh, okay. Obviously,
in the village of Miami
I've
Town.
Been Santa at parties and stuff where the kids come up and as part of a family thing we do it. But and I know that we've got like 1 or 2 maybe of our earliest kids on a Santa's lap in a mall or something, but it wasn't a regular thing that we did. I don't know that I've ever done that. Yeah,
I would never do it. Vicky is, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess she likes picture moments more than I do. I never even consider. I wouldn't consider doing that. I thought you were going to say that a woman hires an act for her kid's birthday, whatever, and it ends up being a stripper. That would be kind of funny, too.
That would be funny.
If you didn't know, if you're looking at adult entertainment or whatever. Well, he's an adult now. He's 18.
It does say adult entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be bad. Well, I think, as the world turns and goes on, I am, having less and less faith in this. But even today, I think most people who would come and do a strip act for, like, a party like that, when they saw the kids, they would not go on with the show.
Hey, you know what I'm supposed to be doing here, don't you?
You want to get the kids out?
Yeah, I would hope.
Anyway, okay. But have you ever? Okay, there's a series of stupid movies with Jason Bateman and a few other guys. One of them is called Horrible Bosses. Have you ever seen that?
Is his wife or is his boss a woman?
One of their bosses might be. It's like a group of guys.
Yeah,
all have horrible bosses.
I think I saw it.
Okay, so and then there's the one like the guy finds somebody to do wet work, and of course wet work means like assassination if you're in the CIA. But I guess online, if you want wet work, it means something different, and that there was a little
wet
bit of
work.
Wet. Yeah.
Or web work.
Well, wet work, like a fetish, like a urine fetish kind of a thing.
What? Are you talking like golden showers type of thing?
Yes.
No, but, okay, and it's called wet work?
Yeah,
That's what it's called?
He says, yeah, I found somebody who does wet work. He said 200 people, or $200 for 3 guys. And they're thinking this assassin's going to show up, and they're going to say, yeah, these are the 3 guys we want killed. But the guy who shows up, what he's offering to do for $300 is to golden shower 3 guys.
Oh,
you might want to cut that part out.
No, it doesn't matter. But I mean,
anyway, just the whole you're bringing up the thing kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah. Okay. I guess both when it's one word, it means murder, and when it's 2 words, it means the other thing. Apparently.
Oh, is that how it works? I would not have ever known that.
I'm looking at Urban Dictionary
because I've never looked up either. I mean, I've never been interested in either.
I've never even heard of either. I did not know that.
Okay. Well, learn something new every day. Okay, sometimes you like to forget you know it. Okay, so this one. So the story is not the story in this case. The headline is that a guy went into a thrift store and bought a painting that might be worth more than $20,000. He got the painting, he brought it home, he thought he would just use the frame. He thought, oh yeah, I'll buy this painting, I'll take it out, I'll use the frame for something. But he got to looking at the signature on the painting and he started doing some research and he thought, oh wow, this looks like it's a print from so-and-so. And then he noticed that there's actually some oil brush strokes that he could make.
Yeah.
And wait a minute, this might be an original from so-and-so.
It's a real painting.
Whose paintings sell between $20,000 and $350,000. Okay, but that's not the story. The story is that this guy is a Canadian. And so this is really a story about the stupidity of Canucks because regardless of how much the painting ended up being worth, it was at a thrift store. When you go to a thrift store, think Goodwill, St. Vincent de Paul, Salvation Army, those kinds of places, right? Yeah. What do you think he paid for the actual original painting itself, thinking, oh, I'm just going to use the frame?
$10.
$96. Not even intending to use the painting. $96 he paid, intending only to use the frame at a thrift store. Canadians are just plain stupid. He doesn't even seem to be embarrassed by it.
I don't believe it. I think he's lying.
What you think he paid 10 and said? Well, I'll say I paid 96 because that way they can't take the painting back. What?
I think he knew or he kind of suspected what it was.
Yeah, but you don't pick up a frame that says $15 and say, "Hey, I'll pay you $96 for this."
Right. But if he's looking through the paintings and he sees something, he's like, "Hey, this looks like an original," and he ends up paying $96 for it. I don't know. I'm just saying.
You go into
he
a
paid
thrift
$96
store,
because
$96 for a painting in a thrift store.
Unless he already knew that it was actually worth $200,000.
The thrift store doesn't market for $96, except
if
apparently
the thrift
in Canada.
store, actually, I do find, because I go to a lot of Goodwills.
I mean, sometimes you'll find a hi-fi.
Some stores are always over
Goodwill for
priced.
$96.
So the worker notices that it's an actual painting, not just a print.
So you think
and
he marked
says,
it up?
He marked it up, and he's like, "Well, I could probably get a little bit more money for this because maybe it's worth way more, but I don't know the guy, so I'm just going to mark it."
It doesn't go into his wallet.
Yeah, I know, but that's why it's only $96.
I don't know.
I'm just saying. I don't believe he bought. There's no way because I actually do that. I buy pictures so I can reuse the frame. All the framed pictures in my house came from Goodwill.
Yeah,
I bought
but
them
they cost
and
you
took the pictures out.
Piece, right?
Yeah, around $10 or $15.
Okay, for really
big
nice
ones,
frames.
For nice ones.
Yeah. Frames that if you went into Hobby Lobby, got that same frame, it would cost you $70 or $80.
Yeah.
Probably. So
$7 what?
$70 or $80.
Yeah, right. Correct. Okay, well,
so, anyway, I think
for some reason he's lying about.
I don't think in
why
America you would ever
$96.
find a painting in a thrift store for $96, but you find it.
No,
in Canada.
You would find it for 15
exactly.
Or
that's my
something
point.
Else entirely.
So to me, the story isn't
like
the fact that he bought a $20,000 painting in a thrift store. It's the fact that he paid $96 for a painting that he thought was worthless, only in Canada.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah, Canada. Well, they're a weird group of people.
Yep. All right. Even weirder are the Far East people.
The what?
The Far East people.
Yeah.
Animal rescuers in Singapore were called to a home where a woman thought she heard a cobra hissing. Once they got there, after a thorough search, they ended up rescuing her from a malfunctioning electric toothbrush.
So you're talking about like pest control or something like that?
Yeah, animal the people who come and get snakes out of your basement and cats out of your tree and stuff like that.
Or something.
It was an animal welfare group. The woman thought she heard a dangerous snake hissing in her bedroom, so she called animal welfare.
Tell me this. Have you ever in your life heard a snake hiss?
You know what? No.
I don't think they actually hiss.
Maybe cobras do. I've never been around a cobra.
I got to look this up because I don't think snakes actually hiss. I think that's just the sound they put in the movies because they got their tongue out.
King cobras are shy and will avoid humans. It says it will flare out its hood and emit a hiss sound that sounds almost like a growling dog. They can reach 18 feet in length, making them the longest of all venomous snakes. Okay,
I didn't know that. I didn't know they really hissed because I've caught snakes hundreds of times, but maybe something real big would be louder.
Maybe apparently they sound like electric toothbrushes, though.
I guess so. But she must have. I would think that would be like a hiss and then not a hiss for a while.
Yeah,
but a constant hiss that's like always there.
It was an Oral-B electric toothbrush.
Where is Singapore? Is this this woman needs a husband?
Yeah. I think you hear a snake, honey. Shut up. Go to bed. It's just the toothbrush.
Yeah, just shut up. But I can think of a lot of times where it's like everybody hears something, and it could be a rumble or a hiss or something, and it's like I can think of several times where it's like everybody in the house is trying to find this sound.
Yeah.
And they're, and it ends up being like a toy that was left on that's just kind of, the batteries are run down, so it sounds really weird. And, but thinking it's a snake, that's just, Well, okay.
All right.
Thought it was a snake.
Yep, those sneaky hygiene products. Okay, this kind of ties in with the earlier one about the Canadian guy. I'm really struggling hard to understand what the issue is, because people are using words like ruined and stuff like that. So this artist had what is called an abstract painting. I'm going to call it a mess. Along a wall, and under the abstract painting are all these paint cans and paint buckets. So this couple, this is in South Korea, by the way. So this couple, and it's like in some mall in South Korea, this couple, seeing all the paint buckets and paintbrushes, thought, oh, hey, look here, they have a wall where everybody's supposed to come by and paint a little bit. So
that would make sense.
The black, they did the natural thing. They took the paint, I guess they chose the black one, added a couple of their own strokes to the painting, and people are. I mean, the news article is using words like ruined the painting and stuff like that. It's like, so if you saw this thing, in fact, I think I sent you the email. It's like, what's to ruin? There's nothing here to ruin.
Yeah. So there's basically, it looks like...
It's a random mess, and they added some more random mess.
Yeah, it's just paint streaks and splatters. Yeah. Like you would... Like if you took a paint canvas and laid it down on the floor, and you used that whenever you painted, 20 years later, this is about what it looked like.
Once in a while, you knock the bucket over and get a big splotch, stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. This is what it looks like.
1,000 different colors... And
so this is what's on display as a masterpiece, and somebody comes and adds some splotches of paint to it. It didn't even change it to do that. It's like it's the same painting. You can add as many. If
they didn't have a close up of what these people did, you wouldn't know what was ruined and what wasn't ruined.
Yeah, because I mean,
despite the fact that. As part of the exhibit, they left all these paint cans there.
Cans and stuff.
And brushes. So, what did they do? Did they arrest the people?
Well, they found them and they brought them in. I don't think that they're like charging them with anything like that. The artist himself is, I think, said he's not really inclined to do anything about it. Well, of course he's inclined not to do anything about it because he knows that it was just he just like, threw stuff around anyway. He didn't put any effort into it.
Okay, here we are. Ruined a $440,000.
Yeah, $440,000. That's what the mall paid for it. That's just shows
that guy's got some.
The guy's like laughing.
He's got some friends in the city council or whatever.
Yeah.
The fact that they paid more than $50 to do this, he's just odd.
He's like, oh, and then somebody added to it. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So what do I care? I got $440,000.
That's right.
$100,000. $440,000. That's insane. Yeah.
For this, I don't know. A kid could do this. So anyway, that's.
Here's the thing about things like that. Like if you're a kid and you have to paint something, or if you're someone who's not good at painting,
that's what you do.
And you have to create something. It's like, okay, what I'll do is make like a paint splatter image.
And I'll call it abstract.
My daughter had some kind of project, and they had I don't know what it was. They had something they had to paint, and they could use like 3 different colors, and they said paint it however you want. And I suggested to her, well, why don't you go ahead and do a splatter paint? Since no one in our family has any artistic ability whatsoever, just take it and throw paint at it, and it ended up looking pretty good, you know?
Yeah.
And so it looks good that way.
Yeah,
but
that's the thing.
If you were an artist...
It could be a splatter paint and still be kind of pleasing to the eye, the colors and the balance and stuff.
Right.
Without being anything. But there's no such thing as ruining something like that.
Right. Putting more splatters on it doesn't do anything to it. It just... because you can't tell the difference. So, oh, well. Like if he came by a year later and saw it, he wouldn't be like, "Oh, somebody ruined my painting."
Exactly, that's the point. It's, if nobody even noticed it, I think they found it by watching like video footage or something like that. But
yeah, somebody saw him do it.
Like people who had seen it came back a year later, they wouldn't even recognize the new spots or whatever. Kind of reminds me. I don't know if you remember. This, I think this was back in early 90s maybe, and Rush Limbaugh was talking about, AM versus FM radio, because he always had that term. What was it, like long-haired maggot-infested FM types?
Long-haired maggot-infested,
FM types, yeah. So,
types.
But so he would talk about the music that you hear on the FM radio stations, and he said, you can't even tell one song from it. He said, "Look, I'm going to take like just parts of two different songs. You tell me when I switch from the one to the other." And this painting is kind of like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. So
anyway, let's see. Okay, that is all I have for nonsense news.
Okay, and you've got the saint of the week, right? We have a
saint of the week. That's right. We'll be talking about Saint Moses the Black, also known as Saint Moses the Strong.
Moses the what?
The Strong.
The Black also as the Strong?
That's right.
Okay.
Saint Moses the Black or Saint Moses the Strong. And he was both. He was born in the early 4th century, so around 305, 313, something like that. He was likely Ethiopian. He was black. And as a man, he was very big and very strong. He was one of the Desert Fathers. And so I ought to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about the Desert Fathers real quick. So... yeah,
because I think I've got one on the way.
Okay. So the Desert Fathers... I think the best way to think of the Desert Fathers is this. So Christianity grew up in kind of a crucible in the Roman Empire. They were persecuted. And, you had the various hard persecutions. But even between the hard persecutions, they were kind of oppressed. And so being Christian was a hard life. Christianity had a sharp edge to it. Well, with the Edict of Milan by the Emperor Constantine, Christianity started to a little bit lose its edge. People were able to suddenly be comfortable and live comfortable lives and still be Christians. Almost overnight, many Christians went from being persecuted to being almost favored, within the localities, because people knew that the emperor was favorable towards Christianity. So it's like things changed. Well, some people realized that their own Christian life and their own commitment to Christ required a harder life. It required them to live a life of kind of rejection of worldliness and the world. And so under this kind of new world where to be a Christian could be so comfortable suddenly, they sought a more ascetic lifestyle out in the deserts. The deserts really just spots away from the cities is all that means. And so they would go out to caves and valleys and stuff like that, and sometimes congregate as groups of brothers, sometimes just live by themselves as hermits. And these became kind of the earliest examples of the model of what turned into monastic life and monasteries and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So when we refer to them as the Desert Fathers. Well, Moses the Black became a Desert Father. And the story how he became one is, I've seen a couple different stories, but everybody seems to agree he was raised as a slave in a somewhat important household. But he was not a nice guy at all. He routinely stole from them. At one point, he committed murder, and so he was run out of the household. He fell in with a band of violent robbers, and he was so vicious, not to mention physically big and strong, that he became their leader. He committed lots of robberies and lots of murders in his times as a marauder, basically, throughout the land. Mm-hmm. Now, one account says that the family who had him as a slave were sun worshippers. And from time to time, he would look up into the sun and say, if you are a god, let me know it. And God that I do not know, let me know you too. So it's like he kind of would voice this desire to know God, whether it's the sun or somebody else. And one day somebody overheard him and told him that the monks at this certain valley where a community of the Desert Fathers lived know the real God, and that they would tell him if he went there. So he went there and met with a priest, Saint Isidore. At first they were afraid of Moses because they kind of knew who he was. They wanted him to go away, but he assured him that he just wanted to know God. That's why he was there. And so eventually they took him in. Now, one account has it that they trusted him so much that for a long time, they wouldn't let him in, but he just kept coming around and hounding them and saying, hey, I want to know your God. And, eventually they let him in. Yeah. Another account says that he sought the Desert Fathers out in order to avoid capture by authorities. So I'm not sure which is actually the true story, but somehow he ended up with this group of Desert Fathers. And it's possible that all these accounts have some truth to them, that the real truth is some agglomeration of all of them.
Something in between there.
Yeah. So anyway, so he joined the Desert Fathers, who were kind of extreme ascetics, like monks developed to be. I don't think they had like a special, like a rule of life. It was just, here's the life we live. He was fairly intense in his asceticism, and even so much that the devil would become envious and give him various physical afflictions to try to get him to be less ascetic. But he didn't easily take to a life without his former vices. He was tempted by them frequently. He would talk to the priests about, especially Saint Isidore, about his passions for food, adventure, and women too. And he would ask the advice of Saint Isidore. Saint Isidore once explained to him that he kind of took him out and said, "Let's watch the sun rise." It was still dark, and the sun came up. And then Saint Isidore explained to him. He said, "Look, the sun's rays only slowly dispelled the darkness here. It wasn't a fast thing. It wasn't all of a sudden. You've got to trust that the rays of grace are going to only slowly dispel the darkness in you, but they will do it. You've got to trust that." So I guess these temptations especially plagued him in his dreams, and a lot of times what he would do is adopt more ascetic practices in order to combat these temptations to keep him from going back to his old life. There are a few stories that kind of grew up around Moses the Black. He was eventually ordained a priest, and according to a certain, and I'm going to just read this verbatim, account of his ordination, it was said of Abba Moses, Abba, by the way, just another word that means father, so they called each other Abba, whatever, Abba Isidore,
Father
Abba
Moses.
Okay. So it was said of Abba Moses that he was ordained, and that the ephod, I guess, what is that? Some kind of a amulet or a medallion or something that's placed on the priests when they were ordained.
What word did you say?
Ephod, E-P-H-O-D. I should have looked up what that word is so I could explain it.
Okay.
What? Doggone it. I just closed my browser. Hold on.
Yeah, it's kind of got coming from Hebrew, object to be revered in ancient Israel culture, and was closely connected with oracle practices and priestly ritual.
Yeah, but
now that's the.
Where was it? Was it placed on the head or on the shoulders or
sacred vestment worn originally by the high priest?
Okay, so it was just one of the vestments. And I remember reading about that in like from the very like right after the Exodus, when God was explaining to Moses about the establishing the priesthood of Aaron. The ephod was part of their vestments. Anyway, when it was placed on it, so the archbishop said, "See, Abba Moses, now you are entirely white." And Moses said back, "It is true of the outside, Lord and Father." Even his skin was black, but he said, "It is true of the outside, Lord and Father. But what about him who sees the inside?" So he was very concerned and always bothered by his own interior darkness that he knew about because of his past and because of the kind of ongoing temptations to return to that past. The archbishop wanted to test him, and so he said to the priests, "Hey, when Abba Moses comes into the sanctuary, drive him out and then follow him to see what he says." Now I want to hear what he says. So when Moses came in, they immediately started abusing him and saying, drove him out of the sanctuary saying, "Get out of here, black man." So going outside, they followed him to hear what he'd say. And he said to himself, "They have acted rightly concerning you," talking to himself, "for your skin is black as ashes. You are not a man, so why should you be allowed to meet men?" So he was very humble about himself too. He didn't, he wasn't conceited or haughty. He didn't consider himself worthy of the graces that he was receiving, even from God. One time, his reputation as a monk was spreading, and the governor of the region wanted to see him. So the governor went to the area where the group of brothers were. That they call it a monastery, I guess, but monasteries hadn't really happened then. But he had some servants with him and sent the servants to go find the place where he stayed. I guess these desert fathers, they would live in a group, but then they would all each go find their own cave or something to serve as a cell that they would sleep in and stuff. So anyway, the servants...
Yeah, and I think they had specific kind of meeting times that they would meet up with each other, and it was lot, between a lot of them, it was agreed that they would kind of hold each other accountable, things like that.
Yeah, right. So anyway, the governor sent his servants, and Moses learned that the governor he didn't want to meet anybody, so he left his cell and started, going on his way to go find somewhere to hide. And the governor's servants came upon him, and they asked him where they could find the cell of Moses, Abba Moses. And Moses just said to them, "Go no further to see that false and worthless monk." And so they turned around and they went back to the governor to say what this guy they had come across had said to them. So then when they told the governor that, and then the other brothers that were with the governor said, "Well, what did this guy look like?" And they described it and said, "Oh, that was Moses." At one point, another brother in his group had committed a fault, and he was asked to join a meeting to discuss an appropriate penance. He didn't want to attend, and so then he was called to the meeting again, and I guess they're, like you said, it's like they're kind of committed to these things, expected to take part. Mm-hmm. So he took a leaking jug. Now, some people say water, some people say sand, but basically a jug filled and leaking it, and he carried it on his shoulder to the meeting with the sand or water leaking behind him. And so then when he approached the meeting and the other brothers said, "What's the meaning of this?" He said, "My sins run out behind me and I do not see them, but today I'm coming to judge the errors of another." on hearing his take on that and his, how he thought of this other monk's sin, they decided to just forgive the erring monk. There's one time when he was, and by the way, this is kind of all we have. We don't have like a consistent, like a step through story of his life, just a series of stories about him that occurred. Mm-hmm. But some robbers entered his cell and attacked him, and he was big and strong, so he basically whipped him and tied him up and dragged him to the chapel.
Bad move.
That's right.
He tied them up?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I think he tied them up because he dragged them all to the chapel where the other monks were.
Oh, okay.
And he said, "What should I do with these four? Because as a Christian, I don't think I'm permitted to inflict harm on them." Well, the other monks ended up agreeing to go ahead and let them go. Some accounts, however, hold that the four who entered his cell and attacked him didn't know that was his cell. They were just going to rob, a monk, and try to get whatever valuables maybe there was in the monastery. But when they learned when they saw that it was him that they had attacked, and that he was being merciful towards them instead of killing them or whatever, they ended up becoming monks themselves. Now, that's just one account. I don't know if that actually happened, or if that's an embellishment of the original story. But multiple accounts seem to agree that he was attacked and subdued four robbers and took them to the brothers. So anyway, that's
neat.
Yeah. Eventually, he reached the age of 75, and he somehow got word that some brigands, some Berbers, would be descending on the monastery where he lived and would kill everyone there. And so he invited his fellow monks to leave, saying, "Hey, all of you, you don't have to suffer through this." And they tried to persuade him to leave too. Said, "Well, wait a minute, if you know, why don't you come with us?" And he said that he had been waiting for many years for the scripture to be fulfilled for him, talking specifically about Matthew 26, chapter 52, or verse 52 rather. "All who take up the sword shall perish by the sword." And so he figured that would be his manner of death, and this was the time that it would be. Of the monks that were there, 7 of the other brothers decided to remain with him, and he and all seven were martyred. So that's the life of Saint Moses the Black.
Okay. That's a
I don't have any
interesting story.
It is interesting. He is the patron saint of peace and nonviolence, even though, he led a very violent life before becoming
a violent man.
I don't have information about things like his canonization and stuff. This is 4th century, and the concept of like an official process of canonization hadn't actually evolved in the church yet. Mm-hmm. So, there's not like some pope that you can say, this pope canonized him in this year or anything like that. I don't have that kind of information.
Yeah.
But that's all I got.
Okay. Good story.
Yep.
Saint Moses the Black.
Saint Moses the Black or Saint Moses the Strong. And you look, guys, go out, look up some icons of him, and I'll try to find a couple to put links to on our page. Some of the icons are very serene and kind of saintly like, but some of them are kind of fierce looking.
It's a good story. The desert fathers are always kind of fascinated me. The way they recognized that Christianity was becoming a style, and they saw that it has to be taken to a different level. Mm-hmm. You can't just be Christian.
Yeah.
It has to radically change you. And if it's not radically changing you, then it's not true acceptance of Christ.
Right.
And unlike the Muslim world, the radical change is not violent except against one's own worldliness.
Right. It kind of read the Desert Fathers. It kind of makes me uncomfortable because I live a very comfortable Christian life.
Yeah,
so it's like, okay, wait a minute, is it really
Catholic.
authentically Christian to be so comfortable?
Right.
But my understanding is that even some of the community, because the Desert Fathers, because they maintained that asceticism, they also tended to be a little bit wiser about spiritual things, and people would go out and seek them out and ask for advice. Well, then these people
a lot of them
would end up staying with them, and then those communities would grow so large that then some of the fathers in those communities would then go separate themselves yet again.
and like you had said, this didn't directly grow into monasteries, but it developed
more like a prototype
into that.
Yeah,
eventually
of the concept of the monastic life.
Right. Okay. Good story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all we got. We're ready to close now. Except, again, go to a podcast about CatholicThings.com.
Buy your T-shirt.
And look at the shirts we have for sale. We do not ask for and never will ask for donations. And we really don't spend money to do this show. I mean, I know how to do most of the stuff myself, and I'm able to find cheap hosting and things like that. If we ever got popular, it would start costing money because hosting would be more expensive. Because you can find pretty cheap hosting, and they always guarantee like unlimited bandwidth and unlimited space. But nothing's really unlimited. If you started costing them money, they'd say, "Hey, hold on, you can't host this here. You need to find a different server." So if we got really big, we would need money, but right now we don't need money, but it does take some money. A lot of these things the money that it does cost is donated to us, usually by Jason. That's why we mention him so much. That's because originally I was trying to get him to be part of the podcast, and instead of coming on, air with us, he
helps behind
often pays for things that we need, like the music that we have in the background. That costs money. That's from him. And of course, he's starting his own website right now, CatholicNuggets.com.
Yeah, go check it out.
I would love to see a bunch of people wearing that shirt. That would be awesome. Just because it would be awesome.
That's right.
Anyway, that's all we got. And think about what we said. And as always,
circle the beads.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.